between the Niners and the Rams. It came down to two goal line stands by the Niners defense versus the Rams offense. It was epic to watch. We'll talk about that in the NFL News of Notes segment. Also, we got a shout out here. We're going to begin the show like this. Fierce Fighting Championship. They have an epic weekend coming up here as they'll be at the Salt Palace Convention Center this weekend having a ton of fights. 9 fights on their pay-per-view card this weekend. It is going to be electric. So if you want a pair of tickets to go watch the Fierce Fighting Championship brought to you by FightCon at the Salt Palace Convention Center this weekend, text in to 877-353-0700. Text in the code word FIERCE, 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 and you could be a lucky winner to win 2 tickets to go to the Fierce Fighting Championship this weekend. They have 9 fights this weekend. It'll be fun, live on pay-per-view as well. If you cannot go down to the Salt Palace Convention Center, you can check out their website at fiercefightingchampionship.com to find out information on how to buy the pay-per-view and how to buy tickets to go to the Salt Palace Convention Center. Obviously, we're downtown here on 50th Broadway Street. The Salt Palace Convention Center is just a walk away, and it's not that very far. There's plenty of parking, obviously a little free on the weekends, but still it is going to be an epic fight card by Fierce Fighting Championship. So again, text in Fierce, FIERCE, as I try to spell it, to 877-353-0700, and you could be a lucky winner for 2 tickets to go watch the Fierce Fighting Championship this weekend. We got a lot more to talk about. We're going to talk about Caitlin Clark. She came out and said that Nafisi Collier had a valid point on what she said about the WNBA commissioner. We're going to listen to that and react to that. Also, we're going to talk about college football. The Big Ten are getting another hefty paycheck to add to their bank accounts. We'll talk about that. Shedeur Sanders is not happy about the fact that he's still QB3 on the depth chart with the Cleveland Browns. We're going to get into that. And we'll talk about this NFL weekend a little bit with some of the big matchups and much more. And we're going to start this show with the MLB playoffs as it was last night. A lot of the wild card rounds ended. We now know who is going to move on into the division series. Let's get into all that with the hot headlines. First hot headline to dive into is the MLB playoffs as it was last night. The New York Yankees rookie pitcher, man, looked like freaking Randy Johnson on the mound, throwing 12 strikeouts versus the Boston Red Sox to give the Yankees their first playoff series win. Okay, now, one of our great friends at the ESPN 700 studios, James, is a huge Boston Red Sox fan. He was talking to me about it before this series, saying, you know what, the Boston Red Sox are 9-1 since 2004 against the New York Yankees in playoff games and series. The only time the Yankees were able to beat the Red Sox was in a playoff wild card game when it was back to the 1 games in 2021. I think he said that was the case, and that was the only time the Yankees had beaten the Red Sox. But now the Yankees have their first playoff series win versus the Boston Red Sox since 2003. 2003. I had my buddy Zach Robinson, Zach Attack, with me. Zach, were you even born then? I was born in 2000. I was way past born in 2003, but I don't specifically remember 2003 that well. But since 2003, it's been 22 years since they beat the Red Sox, man.
I was probably about 1 year old.
Wow, 1 year old. You don't remember nothing.
No, not at all. But it's a great series win for the Yankees. I know a couple of Yankee fans are happy that they beat their rival in the Bronx. Obviously, not a good outing for the Red Sox after having a blockbuster trade this year with saying Rafael Devers to the Giants, and in return you get pitching with Kyle Harrison from the Giants, who was their top pitching prospect, and obviously having a good start to the Giants season before traded to the Red Sox. But I'm looking at this season for the Red Sox, and they can just kind of build from here, Martin. You know, you enter free agency, you can bolster your roster, fill in some depth chart holes that you see from your positions, either in the infield or the outfield. But for the Yankees, it's all about continue the momentum of pitching well, hitting well. Torpedo bats have been a big thing for the Yankees this year, and I know Aaron Judge is itching for that ring. As I said, there's got to be a way for the Yankees to kind of capitalize off this series win against a rival.
Yeah, well, they got to go up against another rival. They're going to have to face off against Toronto in the division series to try to compete for a championship series. We'll see how that goes for them. Other MLB ones that went down yesterday, series that went down yesterday. Let's talk about the first of Detroit. Let's stay in the AL. Detroit beats Cleveland. They will move on to face Seattle in the division series. That is going to be a fun one between the Tigers and the Mariners. I wanted Cleveland to move on. I do not like Detroit. I will not hesitate to say that whatsoever. I do not like Detroit at all. I'm a Chicago White Sox fan. We do not like Detroit. I don't like anybody in the AL Central, okay? I don't like Minnesota. I don't like Kansas City. I don't like Cleveland. I'm a Chicago White Sox fan. I don't like losing to division rivals, but I do not like Detroit whatsoever, okay? I do not at all. Another team I do not like that moved on yesterday is the Chicago Cubs. That's the only time I'm ever going to say their real name. The Northsiders found a way to beat the San Diego Padres yesterday. They will move on as well. They're going to face off against the Milwaukee Brewers in the division series. And funny enough, I dug a little history and tried to find out whether this is the first time ever Milwaukee versus Chicago in the playoffs has ever happened. And little research that I have done says this will be the first time the Brew Crew and the Cubbies will face off in the division series or in the playoffs, period, for the first time in their history. And that is interesting considering how many times Milwaukee versus Chicago has happened a many amount of times. Greg Counsell, now the new manager of the Cubs, will be going up north to face up against his old team. Is Milwaukee ready to go into another division series and win it? They had struggles last year. Obviously, they lost to the Mets in the wild card series. They couldn't get that done. The last time the Brewers were in a situation like this, they went all the way to the championship series and lost to the LA Dodgers, who went on to lose the World Series to the Boston Red Sox. So can the Milwaukee Brewers get past one of their arch rivals in the Chicago Cubs? We will see. The Brew Crew versus the Cubbies. It is going to be a fun one between them. And honestly, it could be called the I-95 rivalry series, considering I think the I-95 travels that far up north. I could be wrong. You would think I would know considering I'm from Chicago. But I think it travels up that far, but we'll see. Anyhow, also last night in those three series, obviously that a series got over beforehand. Dodgers are going to face off against the Phillies. We got Texans saying go Phillies. I am rooting for the Philadelphia Phillies. If you're asking me who I want to win any of those division series, I want Philadelphia, I want Milwaukee, I want Seattle, and I want Toronto. I want some of the underdogs to finally make it to the division series and then move on to the championship series. I want to have a World Series where a team doesn't have a World Series title win. I want some new teams that could hoist a championship, World Series championship trophy over their heads. It'd be fun. I don't know what it would do for ratings. Obviously, everyone would go, well, we want the big teams in there. We want the Cubs. We want the Yankees. Listen, I want just good, fun baseball games. I want the best teams, okay? The best teams are the teams that are going to be playing right now, the ones that won their break in the division series and were hosting those games. I want those teams to move on. All right, let's also talk about this. We're going to play this clip here. Caitlin Clark has some comments to say about after Nafisi Collier came out and said some comments about the WNBA commissioner. She said that the commissioner said that Caitlin Clark should be lucky. She makes $16 million off the court because if she wasn't playing in the NBA, if it wasn't for the league, she wouldn't be making that type of money. This is what Caitlin Clark had to say about that.
First of all, I have great respect for Fee, and I think she made a lot of very valid points. And I think what people need to understand, we need great leadership in this time across all levels. This is straight up the most important moment in this league's history. Well, this league's been around for 25 plus years, and this is a moment we have to capitalize on. So that's honestly what I would say. I think Fee said it all with what she said, and I think the points she made were very valid.
All right, that is a short little clip there of what Caitlin Clark had to say after Nafisi Collier came out and basically not only called out the WNBA commissioner, but she trashed the WNBA commissioner. I know that's a little bit of a harsh word to say on radio. I don't know about trash if some people are listening, but she basically came out and called out the WNBA commissioner for the lack of leadership she has done, for the lack of enforcing officiating around the league, for the lack of pay that goes around towards the veterans and even to the rookies. She pointed out Angel Reese and Paige Becker, who Becker's in Dallas, Angel Reese is in Chicago. Obviously, everybody knows about Caitlin Clark in Indiana and all of that. And, of course, the biggest comment was attacking Caitlin Clark for saying that she's lucky she's making $16 million off the court, and she should be grateful that she's making $35,000 in the league. I mean, think about that for a minute, Zach, as I bring you in to talk about this. $35,000 for Caitlin Clark to play in the NBA for 4.5 months, for 5 months. I think the season's 5 months long. $35,000, and she's got to go off the court to make 16.
Yeah, that's first of all, I wish I could be making that money. First of all,
yes.
Yeah, we all do. But yeah, I mean, calling out the commissioner is not the right thing, I would say, to do, because you do play in this league. You're one of those superstars in this league. Yes, I do think there should be a change of direction for this league, obviously, for players to have more opportunity for the players. But I don't know. It's weird that this is kind of happening during the playoffs as we kind of venture through the WNBA playoffs. What are we on? Like, we're on round 2, right?
We're in the WNBA finals. We know who's going to be playing.
Okay.
We know it's the Mercury versus Phoenix Mercury versus the Las Vegas A's. That is going to be a fun one as it starts.
Yeah, Aces have been looking really good for
Asia Wilson, man.
Yeah, Aja Wilson. Oh, excuse me, Aja Wilson. I don't know how to say her name.
Yeah.
Asia. But yeah, it kind of brings up the question, like, what is the next direction for this league? Players respect players, but there's also those times where, Angel Reese is Angel Reese, right? Caitlin Clark is Caitlin Clark. Haley Van Lith is Haley Van Lith, right? Actions from players have consequences, and there's definitely going to be some sort of direction change by the commissioner, but we don't even know what that direction change is going to be.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I brought those two questions up in our rundown. Is this the right move to go after the commissioner? I think it is. I think this is bold. I think this is a big move by the WNBA players themselves. Obviously, they wore the T-shirts at the All-Star game saying, pay us more money. Obviously, there was the controversy and the fight back with kneeling and in some of the talks in payment during the COVID era of sports and how that was going to go down. There was a minority owner of the Atlanta team that stepped away and made some comments about the players, about the league, that the WNBA commissioner had her sell her percentage immediately. So she's done some good things, but hasn't done absolutely everything perfectly. But nonetheless, the point is this the right move by the players? I think it is, because at some point, this league's got to take another step into being respected and credible. And if the players are going after the commissioner saying, hey, you need to do better in representing us, that's bold enough for me to say, okay, I guess I got to look at how I manage things a little bit better, because that's important, because I can't lose the respect of the players. We've seen this with the NFL, the fact that there's been lockouts in the NFL, the NBA. We've seen the lockout of that, the NHL, the lockout there. So there are times where the players have to fight back to the commissioner and say, we need more respect, and we need more respect from you personally. And I think it's okay of an attack. I don't think it's totally out of bounds. You're getting it from someone who is respected in the league. Nafisi Collier, a WNBA All-Star MVP, someone who's been respected, someone who's won a championship. So you're not just getting it from some bench player. You're getting it from one of the stars in the league, not as recognized as Caitlin Clark, but still on that level of someone that is respected in the league. And I think another point to bring up, Zach, is Nafisi Collier brought it up. Caitlin Clark didn't bring this up. She didn't go to the mic and say this. Nafisi Collier said this. And that is where I'm going to go with this big time, is that, yes, we saw it at the All-Star break where the players were trying to, vote down Caitlin Clark. She was the 7th highest ranked player amongst player votes to go to the All-Star game. Obviously, Caitlin Clark was number 1 when it came to the fan base. She was number 2 when it came to the media. But she was number 7 when it came to players voting for her to go to the All-Star game. They may not like her, but they respect her. They know she's the face of the league. They know she is what's driving more money and what's driving more viewership and what's driving more attention to the league. That's all well and good, and we know that's just going to create more and more buzz as the league grows and as she grows as a player. Once she fully gets healthy, once she hasn't torn her hamstring off the bone and can play a full season and play in the WNBA finals and hoist a championship, we'll see her take that next step of being the true legendary statue of this league. But for right now, obviously, she got injured. She couldn't play with the Indiana Fever to make it to the WNBA finals. But I think the players respect her enough to know that they have to use her in a positive way to gain some of the respect that they have been so desiring in this league. Players are getting paid under $100,000. Some players are getting paid under $100,000. Some players are getting over $200,000. But there's a ton of players in this league that are getting paid under $100,000 to play in this league. There are players that got drafted by teams that get cut in training camp. Like the Valkyries did that. They drafted 3 players. None of them made the roster when they opened up the season. So you have all of this movement in the league where the money is just not there to sustain some of the players on the roster. So what is the next direction for this league? Well, it is, to me, to find a way to find someone else to be the commissioner. I don't know when that vote will be done. I don't know when the NBA is going to step in to help that with that decision. Who will be the next WNBA commissioner? Should there be a new WNBA commissioner? Who knows about that? But this is all very interesting. All right, last hot headline we got here before we go to break. Utah Mammoth are in another battle again. We talked about this, Zach. I think we talked about this on the Bryson Bianucci show, I think, about 2 months ago when it came out that Mammoth Hockey, a bag and T-shirt branded hockey establishment in Portland, Oregon, filed for a grievance and saying that the Utah Mammoth cannot use Mammoth in their name because it is driving more interest to the Utah Mammoth than it is to Mammoth Hockey. That they said that they're losing money, they're losing online interest. No one is looking them up anymore. Once you do look them up, once you look up Utah Mammoth, period, it goes to the Utah Mammoth. If you look up Mammoth, period, just put that in the Google search, it brings up the Utah Mammoth. They have filed another grievance against the Utah Mammoth and against the NHL in Utah. I don't know how well that's going to go for them because if you're filing for that in Utah, I don't think you're going to get any Utah judge or court to agree with you. I understand that what they're saying because if there's another brand out there taking interest away from you, you should step up and say, hey, wait a minute, this is my business. I don't want you guys to hog all the interest. I want the interest to go to me as well. I totally understand that. But this is a battle I don't think Mammoth Hockey are going to win at all. I get it. They're completely different than the Utah Mammoth. One's an NHL team. One's a hockey brand that sells bags, T-shirts, water bottles, does some designing for hockey gear as well. So I totally get that. But I think the battle is going to go the wrong way for them. I don't think they're going to win anything at all. They filed a cease and desist order. We'll see how that goes. But, man, can the Utah Mammoth get a break, please? Can we just get a name? Can we just have a name? We already got jerseys. We already got branding done. We got everything ready for the hockey season. Like, come on. Well, what's it going to take? How much money does Mammoth Hockey want? Those are between private doors of Mammoth Hockey and Ryan Smith. We'll see what happens there. But the Utah Mammoth are going to have to go to court to fight for their name. I think they'll win, and they'll have to go up against Mammoth Hockey. We'll see how that goes. Those are your hot headlines here on the Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, let's dive into last night's Thursday night football game. The Niners and Rams. What a fun game it was. And what did Shedeur Sanders say about the media, about him still being QB3, all of that and much more coming up here on the Down and Dirty with Martin Kelly holding in for Scott Mitchell here on ESPN 792.1 FM. That was the play call last night off of Thursday Night Football. The goal lines, basically a goal line stand, fourth down stance by the San Francisco 49ers defense versus the LA Rams offense. It was a barn burner last night, 26-23 win in overtime for the San Francisco 49ers over their arch rival, the LA Rams. Man, what a fun game last night, Zach. I was watching that game last night. I was cooking food last night, and as I'm cooking, as I'm watching, let's break this down quarter by quarter. First quarter, the San Francisco 49ers come out hot, 14 points, 2 touchdowns in the first quarter versus the LA Rams. They're banged up walking into this. No George Kittle, no Nick Bosa, no Brock Purdy. No, they were missing a right tackle, I think a right guard last night. They were missing players left and right. No, they still don't have their top receiver. I forget his name off the top of my head.
Ricky Pearsall.
The other one, Ricky Pearsall.
Juwan Jennings.
Juwan Jennings. The other one, he's on the PUP list. Who's Brandon Ayuk? It finally came back to me. Ayuk is hurt. They're missing 3 wide receivers last night. They got to go to Kendrick Bourne to be their top flight receiver last night versus the LA Rams. And man, does he have a game of his life. 10 catches for 142 yards with who would have ever thought Mac Jones, the guy that was drafted by the New England Patriots, the guy that was passed off by the Patriots, goes and be a backup in Jacksonville, has a horrendous run as the backup, started a couple games, didn't go right, finds a revival in San Francisco with a torn ACL. It's not only just bruised up. It's not only just a little hurt. It is torn off that bone. I still don't know how he got up and did all that last night. Incredible. Second quarter, the Rams defense finally came through. They stopped the Niners. They were allowing them to run up and down the field, but no points were scored. They kick a field goal to end the half. It's 17-7. LA finally gets on the board with a touchdown drive of their own. They come on into the second half, and again, it's all LA. Okay, yes, San Francisco is getting some yardage. They're getting up and down the field a little bit, but they haven't been able to put the ball in the end zone, okay? It ends there. It's 17-14, I think it was, after the third quarter. No, excuse me, it's 20-20 at the end of the third quarter. So that means LA put up not 1 but 2 touchdowns in the third quarter, and only San Francisco was to muster up a field goal. It's 2 field goals in 2 quarters for them. They only were able to manage 6 points in 2 quarters. And then we have the barn burner of the fourth quarter, okay? San Francisco gets the ball back. They try to score. They don't. LA gets the ball. They try to score. They don't. And then it goes down to the last 5 minutes. LA has a chance to go down the field and score. They're down 23-20. They're looking like they're going to go up, and that doesn't go right. They not only fumble once in the red zone, they fumble twice. Kyren Williams can't hang on to the ball. San Francisco finds a way to come up with a stop, but LA survives. They kick a field goal to force overtime. And I'm forgetting to mention the blocked PAT that would have put LA up 21-20. And if it would have gone down that way, Zach, let's say they go up 21-20. San Francisco kicks a field goal, 23-21. All LA would have needed was another field goal to win 24-23. We wouldn't be talking about this game in this perspective, dude. If you don't miss the PAT, you win that game by 1 last night. There's no need for overtime.
Yeah. There's a lot of kicking errors and special teams are like in disarray. I mean, Joshua Carty, 2 missed PATs/field goals. I mean, one of the 2 was blocked. I mean, that's also on the O-line for the Los Angeles Rams. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of special team woes in that game. Missed field goals, missed PATs.
LA's had so many issues with field goals and PATs this season. The 2 by Philadelphia is the biggest one.
I mean, we've seen a lot of issues with kickers in general so far this season. We saw it with Jake Moody, who's now not on the 49ers anymore. We've seen it with Younghoe Koo.
17 blocked field goals. 17 blocked field goals or PATs already through 5 weeks of the NFL.
Yeah, so that's my point. Look how many missed PATs, missed field goals, and that's been on blocking. That's been on the kicker. We've seen kickers get dropped because of it, and that's why this game goes into overtime. And then play calling in overtime was great for the LA Rams offense until that fourth down play, Martin. Why are you running it on fourth down when your passing attack has had so much success against the 49 defense on that drive, right?
Yeah, to get to that point, I'm glad you brought up that point. Here's my theory, okay, which is the LA Rams thrive and live off of how much space you are allowed when the field is so big. When you're starting from the 10 and you can spread the ball out everywhere on the field, okay? The Niners defense, when it came to playing in the middle of the field, was not good enough, okay? They couldn't contain Devontae Adams. They couldn't contain Puka Nacua. They couldn't contain Tutu Atwell. He had the big reception in overtime and in the big reception in regulation to help the Rams get into that situation of kicking a field goal and trying to win in overtime. When the field was big, the Niners were just not good enough to stop them. But when that defense got into the red zone and could contain everything in front of them, could keep everything in front of them, could make the Rams question their decision making of should we run, should we pass, what type of passing. Sean McVay failed his red zone offense last night. He got some jitters. He got a little scared. They could not find or pick the right type of plays that they needed to score late in that game last night, to score in the red zone. That's what it came down to in my eyes, Zach, is that their passing a game ability when the field was open to them, when they had all the space to move and get everybody to just dance around a little bit and bite on what decision makings they were making, the Niners defense didn't have an answer. But when it came to that red zone defense, man, the Niners came up big. They made sure that red zone defense was ready.
Yeah, they were definitely ready. And Robert Saleh, who's had a good resume with the San Francisco 49ers, had a great play call ready to go for that fourth down play. And yeah, Sean McVay did get a little jittery, right? We saw that clearly after. He's like, oh, why did I call that play, right? So, and then after when he's talking with the media, he said, this is in quote, "It was a bad call. It was a bad call by me. I'm sick right now because I put our players in a bad spot, and I've got to live with that." He was absolutely heartbroken that he made that call, which is obviously you're at least admitting you made a mistake as an NFL coach. That takes a lot of guts to do, first of all, Martin.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. Everybody's going to rip on him about the overtime play call, but I don't think any blame should go to Sean McVay or to the offense in the sense of what they called when they did get into the red zone, okay? They got that big reception to get into the red zone late in that game. They're driving down the field. They have the clock in their advantage. They have the 2-minute warning. They have the 3 timeouts. They're chewing up the clock. It's a minute change left in the clock. And then all of a sudden, Kyrie Williams fumbles the ball near the goal line versus the San Francisco 49ers. One of their DNs comes in and punches the ball right out. And look, people are going to go, why didn't you pass it down there? I completely agreed with the philosophy that you should have ran the ball down there. You're trying to eat up the clock. You're trying to force the Niners into a situation where do they burn their last time out to save any time? Do they try to come up with something to force a mistake by the Rams down there in the red zone? And they came up with the big mistake because they forced a fumble. But I don't think the decision to make any of those play callings down in the red zone on that second to last drive by the Rams was wrong, because they got the passing that got them down there, run the ball a little bit, make sure the clock milks a little bit. We don't want to leave them enough time to possibly drive down the field to kick a tying field goal, because at that point it would have made the game 27-23, and the Niners would have had to go all the way down the field to score a touchdown to win that game last night. So I don't disagree with the play calling when it came to that situation. I don't think it was completely wrong to call that fourth down and one run. My thing was, why didn't you call the timeout beforehand? You didn't need to call that timeout at all, because that was just a bluff to see whether the Niners are going to fall for it. You're going to kick a field goal here to tie the game up. What is this, Dallas versus Green Bay again? Like, I don't think that was in any way, shape, or form the right decision by Sean McVay to call that final timeout. Everybody knew you were going to run the ball. Everybody knew you weren't going to pass it. Everybody in that stadium knew you should have gone for it on fourth down and we're only going to run it because you just needed 1 yard. All right. If anything, what they should have done on the fourth down play call is fake fake the run and have Stafford run outside the pocket to get the first down. Zach, I think that's what you should have done. You should have faked it to Kyrie Williams and then have Matt Stafford do a rollout, get the first down, and if at all he would have had an open lane to the end zone and would have scored and won the game.
Yeah, I mean, like I was like looking at this as well yesterday. I'm like, wow, they're really loading that box, right? They're loading that box because they're expecting the run from Kyron Williams, right? That's where Matthew Stafford has been successful in this NFL league, play action. And it's obviously not the biggest scrambler, but that dude can run. He can run.
Yes,
so
he can.
And there is that wide open lane. Obviously, that Lenore is going to try to cover that lane from the outside because I saw that as well from the defense yesterday when that play was ran. But either way, fumble or not, they didn't get it, right?
Yeah, that's 100% true. I also want to put, because I think some blame should go on to the fact that the Rams defense hasn't looked good this season so far. I get it. Everyone's going to say, well, their first game, they only allowed 9 points versus the Houston Texans. Yes, that's very true. But if you look at it steadily as the weeks have gone on, they gave up 19 points to the Tennessee Titans, which the Houston Texans defense gave up nothing versus that same offense. And then the week after that, they gave up 33 points to the Philadelphia Eagles. Then the week after that, they get lucky with the fact that Indiana had a wide receiver that didn't want to help their team score any points because they would have scored at least 34 points against that Rams defense in LA. And then you have last night where the Rams defense gives up 14 early points, fights back in that game, but then gave up all the field goals that gave San Francisco that win. That's 12 points, Zach. They gave up enough points, 26 points last night, to lose that game. This Rams defense is slipping a little bit, bro. Like, they went from being stellar in week 1, stopping Houston, and then little by little, they're like a leak anywhere in your apartment that just drips and drips, drop by drop. They're letting points up on this board.
Yeah. Their defense has definitely looked good in the first couple of games. The Colts was probably their first real test, and the Eagles as well. I forgot they played Philly in week 3.
Yep.
Philly and Indianapolis was kind of the real big test for this defense, and obviously their defense didn't look good in the first half, right, for the Eagles game, and then they started playing very well in the second half. Obviously losing to a blocked field goal return for a touchdown by Jalen Carter, and then in the fourth week against the Indianapolis Colts, they still allow 20. What was it? 20 points?
It was 20 points.
Yeah, 20 points.
Aiden Mitchell.
Yeah.
What is Mitchell doing, man?
Yeah, that was not a great play, but and then now you put up 20. You allow 26 points against a division rival.
And now they got to play the Ravens, which the Ravens are all banged up, and I don't know if that defense is going to give up much versus there. They got the Jags and the Saints coming up. That's their next 3 games. So to wrap it up, the Rams defense let the Rams offense down last night. Sean McVay with a bad play call in overtime. You shouldn't have missed a field goal because you would have won the game 24-23 over the San Francisco 49ers last night. Mac Jones shouldn't have had almost 400 yards and 3 touchdowns last night. Kendrick Bourne should have not had a career night at 142 yards on 10 receptions. Okay, none of that should have happened last night. It should have been a win by the Rams. It should have been a walk-away win by the Rams. They should have been trying to think of whether they should have played their second strings in the second half because it should have been like 35-0. That's how bad everybody was predicting that win to be last night for the Rams. And that's not how it went down. The Niners find a way to mess with the Rams on the road or at home. They just find ways to make sure that the Rams suffer even more in any way, shape, or form. It just got to tip your cap. It was a fun game last night, wasn't it, Zach?
Yeah, it was definitely a fun game. And I obviously didn't enjoy watching it as a fan because I am a Rams fan as well as a Broncos fan. And I was like, oh, my gosh, really? What is this play calling? You know, those you're yelling at the screen moments. I'm like, what are you doing, right? But, yeah, I mean, and then this weekend, there's a big slate of games this weekend, Martin.
Yeah, there is a ton of big slate games this weekend. I don't have the NFL schedule right in front of me. I can look it up here in a minute. What a big slate of games. You're absolutely right about that.
We got Vikings taking on the Browns in London. Dylan Gabriel making his first start of his career versus Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about Dylan Gabriel and him getting his first career start here. Shedeur Sanders went after the media this week about how they're being a little picky on him, questioning him, asking him, what do you think about still being QB3? Are you happy about it? What's going on? How come you didn't get picked for the top spot? What's going on? And he was a little, pissed off. He's like, why are you guys questioning me about this? This is the coaching staff's decision. Leave me alone a little bit towards them. Dylan Gabriel is going to get the start for Cleveland on the road in London. Minnesota staying in Europe because they played in Ireland, so not much of a need to travel back to Minnesota, then get back on a plane to go back to London. No need to do that. Just stay over there, practice, and get ready. Carson Wentz will be okay. I think he'll shake off the bad start versus Pittsburgh, but he'll go up against a really good defense in Cleveland, and Myles Garrett's going to be all over him. So we'll see what happens with that. But, Zach, I don't think it's a bad decision to try to see what happens with Shedeur Sanders. You got to start Dylan Gabriel first, right? I mean, he was drafted first before him. He was a third rounder versus a fifth rounder. The fans want to see Shedeur Sanders. I get that. And Dylan Gabriel didn't have a great drive versus Detroit. It wasn't much of a drive to begin with. There was 3 plays that just looked completely wrong. But, going up against this Minnesota Vikings defense, it doesn't matter if you would have started Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel. That Minnesota Vikings defense is going to eat both of them up, okay? I'm a Chicago Bears fan. I had to watch it on Monday Night Football, okay? I watched how bad he made Caleb Williams look bad. Can you imagine what he's going to do to Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders? That's fresh meat. Those are rookies. They don't know how to play against a defense like that.
Yeah, and Brian Flores is a great defensive coordinator, first of all, for the Minnesota Vikings. I don't know if you watched the Season 2 quarterback on Netflix, Martin, but Jared Goff said that Brian Flores is probably one of the toughest defensive coordinators to play against in division as well. So, and I didn't think this Joe Flacco experiment was going to last long. I know people were like, oh, we're gonna reach back to playoffs because we have Joe Flacco back and it's a new year. Everything, like all those speculations, right? And then now you're starting a rookie in Dylan Gabriel, and I understand where Stefanski is going. He's going down his depth chart. Smart move by Stefanski to see what Dylan Gabriel can do in London. Obviously, you're not getting your first start on U.S. soil. You're getting it on the English soil.
I mean, you got to see what you have.
Exactly. And I think the Giants did that. They did the same thing last week with Dart. They now have seen what Dart can do. And I think the Browns are in the same position as the Giants were, where you're starting a veteran in Joe Flacco / Russell Wilson, right? And then you have Dylan Gabriel / Jackson Dart. And then you have Jameis Winston and / Shedeur Sanders. Now you're seeing what your other guys can do and if they can win you games.
Yeah, let's see what happens with Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders. Who knows? Maybe all 3 of them play this weekend. Who knows what's going to happen? Obviously, Shedeur Sanders not happy with an earpiece in his head and watching a tablet. But, I mean, dude, you're playing in the NFL. I wouldn't be complaining. I get it. You want to play, but right now, if he's to play for the Cleveland Browns, I don't know if these 2 quarterbacks would do anything to get Cleveland into a situation of winning. I don't see it at all whatsoever, okay? So we'll see what happens. You brought up that there's a ton of slate of games. Let's go through the schedule here real quick before we go to a break. We got Cowboys versus Jets. That's going to be a Cowboys win if they find a way to blow that. Giants are going to beat the Saints. I have faith in that. Colts versus Raiders. That'll be interesting to see. Dolphins and Panthers. Have fun with that one. Broncos, Eagles. That'll be a fun one to see which 2 defenses come out. Texans, Ravens. That's a battle of which teams are banged up enough not to lose that game. Titans, Cardinals. Buccaneers, Seahawks. That'll be interesting to see. Lions will beat the Bengals. Commanders, Chargers. That'll be interesting. Patriots will not survive on Sunday Night Football versus the Bills. The only interesting game that I see, Zach, is to wrap this up real quick, is the Chiefs versus the Jaguars. The Jaguars got the win on the road versus the Niners, and that was a banged-up Niners team. But what if Liam Cohen in his first season can pull out 2 back-to-back wins versus the Niners and versus the Chiefs and send both of those teams in a spiral of what are we?
Yeah, I mean, this Jaguars offense has not looked bad, in my opinion, but I think Trevor Lawrence has made some questionable decisions, Martin. Agree?
I agree. I agree with that. But he put up 26 points.
Yeah, I mean, they are able to drive the ball down the field, which is obviously something you want to see if you're a Jacksonville fan.
They survived against Houston.
Yeah, that too. They survived against Houston. They survived against a division rival. They did not survive to Cincinnati, but that was when Joe Burrow was hurt. But
they should have won that game.
They should have won that game. I'm not going to lie. But real quick, I think Jacksonville has a chance to win the division this year. Just based on how Tennessee's playing, maybe Indianapolis as well. Maybe it might be up there a little bit. Tennessee, I know I said this on the show a couple months ago before the season started. I'm like, I think the Tennessee Titans. I am going to take back my take, but I can't now.
Tennessee Titans. That's a laughable one. All right. Let's take a break here before some of the Titans fans start texting and going, what are you talking about? That's laughable. Anyway, let's take a break here. When we come back, we're going to wrap this up. The Big Ten have a new big hefty paycheck being added to their bank account. We'll tell you how much and for how long they will be on TV, all that and much more. Coming up here on the Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell, Martin Kelly hosting the show right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Down and Dirty here on Scott Mitchell, with Scott Mitchell. I'm Martin Kelly hosting the show for him today. He is on vacation with his family at Lake Powell. Hopefully he enjoys that. This is ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN radio network. We're having fun today. Martin Kelly, Zach Robinson in for you today. Zach Attack is having a blast with me today, aren't you, Zach?
Yes, I am. Of course I am. We always have a blast when we do this.
Yeah.
As I'm trying to stop the music for our log.
Yes,
here,
you got to learn how to multitask. Okay, I've had to learn how to multitask. Turn off the music, turn your mic on, and learn how to do it. Okay.
Yep, that's the way of producing. You got to multitask here, and it takes a second to get used to, obviously. But
well,
at
you're
the end
from
of
a generation that know how to multitask. You guys look at your phones and drive all at the same time.
I do not do that. do not put thoughts into people's ears, Martin. I do not do that. Do not do that. You will get a ticket.
Hey, you absolutely will around here. You're absolutely right. All right, Zach, let's move on here to our last final segment. The Big Ten are adding $2 billion to their bank account, but they're not just going to keep it to themselves at the corporate office. They're spreading it around to their schools. This money is to go to grants and programs for schools to spend on their universities. This money also eliminates the fact that the Big Ten does not need to look for other private investors to bring in money to the conference itself. This also prevents money. This money also prevents the league from falling apart and the Super League possibly becoming a true thing in college football, as everyone has been spreading around. Well, why not just start a Super League? The college football West versus the college football East. Just get rid of all the conferences, right? I don't believe in that. Keep all the conferences. It's what keeps college football interesting. I just think they should be a little more fair. I don't think the SEC should get 5 teams instead of college football playoffs, and the Big 12 only get 1. I think it should be spread out a little bit more. I think that's the only way that conferences will get better is if one doesn't equal up all the money and the other ones just get a nice chunk change, and that's got to be spread around to 16 teams. Like, that's just not fair in my eyes. But according to ESPN, with the article, this setup discusses in the fact that it will essentially be the formation of a new commercial entity within the Big Ten. They'll be spreading around amongst all the 16 teams. The money is to go to grants, deals, the private capital deal, and grants rights extension has been discussed for months and presents in multiple forms. A deal and the grants of rights extension would be to distinct blow to the outlining of a Super League, possibly in college football. This deal is good up until 2046. I know that you're thinking to yourself, it's 2025. How is this good? It's going to be a long deal. So this is good for the Big Ten to keep their leagues alive, to stay away from all the private companies coming in and buying the league and making the Super League and controlling more. The Big Ten found a way to spend the money right and spread it around to schools and make sure that they can survive on their own. And the fact that, Zach, you're a little bit better at math than me. There's 16 schools in the Big Ten, splitting $2 billion. I don't know, what is that, a couple $100 million for each school? I think at least a couple $100 million, right? At least that?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a good couple million per school. Maybe you said $2 billion, correct?
Yeah, $2 billion.
So that might be like $8 million per school.
Yeah, $8 million for each school. I mean, being passed around. I'll be paying for NIL deals, transfer portal deals, a bunch of other things. I think that's completely right. That'll definitely help out Northwestern, considering they're building a new stadium and whatnot. They'll help them out there. They'll help out Rutgers, Maryland, other schools in the conference that don't get the same type of money as schools like Ohio State and Michigan get and Wisconsin get, just because they're big names in the conference themselves. So I think this is perfect right out this alleyway. And let's dive into another segment. Let's dive into this another way, Zach, as I finish up the show here. 2.5 minutes left to go here as I say my own producing line there. The SEC, there's no sugarcoating. The SEC take up all the money. And they take up all the limelight, and they take up all the action, and they take up all the notoriety. The fact is that the commissioner of their league came out last year and said, we can't slice this pie anymore. We can't add any more teams. You added Oklahoma and Texas. Apparently you can. It's just to which teams will you add and which pies will you slice up. I mean, there talks about them trying to add Clemson and Florida State to the SEC, or Florida State and Clemson getting added to the Big 12 or to the Big 10, or can they be part of the new Pac-12 that could be born? Like, the SEC are taking up so much of the money that the Big Ten have to go out and talk to a private company to add more money to their own conference so they can stay ahead of the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, SEC has been a powerhouse for a while in this college football era, but it's ridiculous how much money they make versus the future Pac-12, the Big 12 right now, the ACC. I mean, it's just ridiculous, Martin, and they're obviously have produced a lot of NFL players as well, but it's hard to see that when you're in a different conference, and now this is happening with the Big Ten as well.
I 100% agree with that, and it's just, you know, we'll see what happens. I want to see one day where the pies amongst everybody gets spread around, okay? Like I said earlier, as we're getting close to the end of the show here, I think it's unfair that the SEC get 5 teams into the college football playoffs while the Big 12 only gets 1, while the ACC only gets 1, while the Big 10 only gets 3. Like, the pie needs to be spread around a little bit better in order for every team to thrive and every conference to thrive, because then it'll just give the SEC even more power to say, see, we're the only ones driving the money. We're the only ones driving the revenue. And I just think one day is going to come back to bite them in the butt seriously hard. All right, that is the Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell. Martin Kelly hosting the show. We're going to be hosting our second hour later in the day, 1 to 2, on ESPN The Fan, 103.9 and 98.3. You can go and listen to us there on the second hour. Thank you guys for so much for listening to us. We will catch you on Monday. Until then, we'll see you then.